Dad's shocking post-grief request, and how it taught me to live again. The world shattered the night my mother, Eleanor, passed away. I had just celebrated my 26th birthday, and life with my fiancé, Damien, felt like a tapestry woven with golden thread. We lived a few blocks from my childhood home, our future shimmering with promise. Then, the phone rang. My father, Arthur, his voice a broken whisper, uttered two words that cleaved my world in two: "She's gone." The funeral became a surreal tableau of grief. Friends and relatives converged, their condolences and casseroles blurring into a meaningless hum. I remember clutching Arthur's hand as we stood by the graveside, his grip of ice, as if he feared letting go of the last tangible link to her. My mother, his high school sweetheart, his wife of over 30 years. The abyss of his pain was unimaginable. In the weeks that followed, I found myself drawn back to him, a reluctant gravity pulling me. Initially, it was about ensuring he ate, a simple act of filial duty. Soon, it morphed into emotional check-ins, and then, almost imperceptibly, I was back to doing his laundry, tidying the house, a ghost of my teenage self. The house remained unchanged, a relic of a happier past, yet now, devoid of Eleanor, it felt hollow, a mere husk of a home. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the funeral, I arrived with groceries. As I organized the refrigerator, Arthur entered the kitchen, his expression unusually grave. "Serafina," he said, using my full name, a formality reserved for moments of profound import, "I need to ask you something." I turned to face him, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. "What is it, Dad?" "I want you to move back in. Just for a little while." The words hung in the air, suspended between us. I blinked, disoriented. "What? Why?" He knew about Damien and me, our impending marriage, our carefully laid plans. He cut me off, his voice softer now, pleading. I know. It's just this house. It's too silent. I can't sleep. I eat dinner alone. I wake up alone. It's a solitude I'm not equipped for." I saw the raw anguish in his eyes, the profound loneliness, a desolation that eclipsed even the grief of the funeral. I swallowed the lump in my throat, the protestations dying stillborn on my lips. "Okay," I conceded, the word feeling heavy, laden with unspoken implications. "But just for a little while." I broached the subject with Damien that evening. To his credit, he understood, though a shadow of apprehension flickered in his eyes. "It's a difficult time," he acknowledged, his voice a low rumble of concern. "But if you believe it will help him, then go. Just don't lose yourself in this, Serafina." And so, I packed a small suitcase, a temporary exile, and returned to the house that had cradled my childhood. My old room was a time capsule, frozen in adolescence. Posters of long-defunct bands still clung to the walls, faded idols of a bygone era. The bed was narrow, the mattress worn, yet there was a strange comfort in the familiarity, a perverse solace in the regression. The first few days were deceptively tranquil. I cooked dinner, we watched television, and Arthur even managed a few wan smiles. It felt like progress, a fragile bud of healing tentatively unfurling. But then, the subtle shifts began, the disquieting undercurrents that belied the calm surface. The requests started innocuously enough, small deviations from the expected. One night, he asked if I would sit with him in the living room until he fell asleep. "The house feels less empty when you're here," he murmured, his voice barely audible. I attributed it to grief, the desperate clinging to any semblance of comfort. But the following night, the request took a more unsettling turn. He asked me to wear my mother's old robe, a silken garment I barely remembered. You look just like her in it," he explained, his gaze too intense, too lingering. A shiver traced its icy fingers down my spine. I dismissed it, attributing the oddness to the vagaries of grief. After all, losing someone so central could warp reality, twist perceptions into grotesque parodies. Then came the night I found him in the kitchen, cradling one of my mother's nightgowns, his back to me, his shoulders trembling with silent sobs. "You remind me of her so much," he whispered, turning to face me, his eyes glistening with an unnerving mixture of sorrow and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. Sometimes I pretend she's still here." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I didn't know whether to embrace him, offer the solace of a daughter's hug, or to flee, to put as much distance as possible between us. I stayed, rooted to the spot by a morbid curiosity, a horrifying fascination. I offered what comfort I could, but inside, a maelstrom of doubt and dread was swirling. Was this normal grief, or was he descending into something darker, something more sinister? A few nights later, the ambiguity shattered, the truth crystallizing into a horrifying clarity. We were having dinner, a simple meal of spaghetti and meatballs. He ate slowly, deliberately, buttering his bread with an almost ritualistic precision. Then, he looked up at me, his gaze unnervingly steady. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice low and resonant, "about moving on." A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. "That's good, Dad," I said, my voice trembling with forced cheerfulness. "Mom wouldn't want you to be alone forever." He nodded, a strange, knowing smile playing on his lips. "I agree. But I don't want someone new, Serafina. I want someone who understands me, who understands this house, who knows me intimately." My brow furrowed, confusion warring with a nascent, sickening dread. "Okay." He reached across the table, his hand covering mine, his touch lingering for a fraction of a second too long, the warmth radiating through my skin like a brand. "I want you to stay," he said, his voice a low, seductive purr. "Not just as my daughter, but as my partner." The world tilted on its axis, the room spinning around me. I froze, every molecule of my being screaming in protest, in disbelief. At first, I thought I had misheard, that my grief-addled mind had conjured a grotesque hallucination. But then I saw the look in his eyes, the possessive glint, the hunger that had no place in a father's gaze. I saw the way he held my hand, the subtle pressure, the possessiveness. I snatched my hand away as if burned, the contact searing my flesh. "No, Dad," I gasped, the word a strangled croak. That's not okay." He recoiled, immediately backtracking, his face crumpling into a mask of wounded innocence. He stammered apologies, a torrent of words about grief, about a twisted mind, about a moment of weakness, a fleeting aberration. "I didn't mean it, Serafina," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "Grief. It's turned my brain to mush. Please, you have to believe me." I nodded, numb with shock and revulsion, but I didn't believe him. The carefully constructed facade of a grieving father had crumbled, revealing the monstrous truth beneath. That night, I called Damien, my voice a ragged whisper, the words tumbling out in a chaotic jumble of fear and disbelief. "Jess, you need to get out of there," he urged, his voice urgent, laced with a fear that mirrored my own. "Tonight. Don't stay there another minute." But I didn't leave immediately. A perverse sense of duty, a morbid need for closure, compelled me to stay. I needed to understand the depths of his depravity, the extent of his betrayal. I needed proof, tangible evidence to solidify the nightmare that had become my reality. The next day, while Arthur was out for his morning walk, a ritual he clung to with religious fervor, I violated the sanctity of his privacy. I went into his room. I hadn't snooped in his belongings since childhood, but desperation had eroded the last vestiges of my moral compunction. I opened his desk drawer, the wood groaning in protest, and found a stack of journals, bound in leather, their pages filled with his spidery script. The initial entries were a chronicle of grief, a lament for a lost love. Page after page detailed his pain, his loneliness, the suffocating silence of the empty house, the long, desolate nights. But as I delved deeper, the tone began to shift, the focus subtly altering. He wrote about me, about how much I resembled Eleanor, about how my presence filled the void, about how my return felt like a divine intervention. One entry, scrawled in a feverish hand, sent a jolt of pure terror through me. "Serafina is my light in this darkness. She is Eleanor reborn." Perhaps it was fate that brought her back into this house, not just as a daughter, but as something more. Maybe this is the universe telling me something. Something I've been too blind to see. I felt my stomach churn, bile rising in my throat. The words were a grotesque violation, a perversion of love and loss that shattered the very foundations of my reality. That night, I sat him down, the carefully rehearsed words feeling brittle and inadequate against the enormity of his transgression. I'm leaving, Dad, I said, my voice trembling, but firm. You need help. Real help. This is more than grief. This is something deeper, something profoundly unhealthy. You need professional intervention. He didn't fight me, not at first. He looked like a broken man, a hollow shell of the father I once knew. But then, a flicker of understanding, or perhaps resignation, flickered in his eyes. He nodded, a single, defeated movement. You're right, he said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. I've been lost. Adrift. I returned home to Damien, the familiar embrace of his arms a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness I had just escaped. I slept for 12 hours straight that first night, a deep, dreamless slumber that bordered on oblivion. And when I woke, I cried, not tears of fear, but tears of profound sadness. I had lost both parents in a way, one to the finality of death, the other to a descent into a madness I still couldn't fully comprehend. Weeks passed. Arthur began therapy, a long and arduous journey into the labyrinth of his broken psyche. He joined a grief support group, a tentative step towards reintegration. I stayed in contact, but I maintained strict boundaries, a necessary shield against the toxic tendrils of his delusion. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to change. He planted new flowers in Mom's garden, a symbolic gesture of renewal. He started cooking his own meals, reclaiming a semblance of independence. He even made a few new friends from his group, tentative connections in the vast emptiness of his solitude. It wasn't perfect, this fractured reconstruction of a life. The scars remained, deep and indelible. But it was something, a fragile testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As for me, I learned a harsh and brutal lesson about the complexities of grief, how it can distort, manipulate, and even rewrite our perception of reality. I learned that love, real, genuine love, sometimes demands the painful act of walking away, of setting limits, of saying no. I still visit him once a week, a carefully choreographed dance of cautious connection. We talk about Mom, sharing memories, laughing at shared jokes, sometimes even crying together. But we never speak of that night, the night the abyss opened up and threatened to swallow us whole. Some things are better left buried in the past, sealed away in the vault of unspoken truths. And some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. But healing, I discovered, is still possible, even in the aftermath of such profound devastation, such unspeakable betrayal. The human heart, it turns out, is far more resilient than we often dare to believe.